start recording and start with our meeting today. And for the ones who actually joined us last month, that was the first part of the MIT training. So that is the Marshal in Charge training officially. I've been asked by a couple other people if you could rerun it because people wanted to get reauthorized or get Marshal authorized. But I don't think a lot of new people joined us. But it ended up, even it's the same as we did last year, the same, well, changed a little bit the PowerPoints, but most likely the same. We got really great discussions out. So if for you who are here today and we're going to about running the event, that's the second part of it. If there's anything you have additional questions, like Donna, you're going to autocrat an equestrian, a major equestrian event in the fall. So if you have anything to put in, adding to it, it's okay to interrupt.
Okay.
And ask questions. This here, what we are doing is for all the marshals to get together from the known world and basically share with our experience or talk about concerns, what works and what doesn't work. So that's basically the purpose of the meeting, plus training people if they need to. With that, I'm going to my cute little PowerPoints because that's what I do. And so again, second part of the MIT training, and that is basically running the event. The first section we did last time is all the stuff that needs to be done before you get to the event. The site inspections, the insurance request, all of that great stuff, finding out if you need any kind of tests as Coggins test or health certificate for incoming horses, what are prices. And that is all stuff normally that is done before the event itself, making sure you have parking spots for the trailers, how do they get in and out. That's normally the first part of it. And Donna, and I can send you all that information I have in here. I assume you did everything by now, but if you those PowerPoints with all the steps on it, you have access on it. It's on the SCA Equestrian Facebook page under files as well. And you're welcome to download those videos from last week. That's all up in the SCA Equestrian Facebook page.
Okay.
If you have other stuff you might have questions about or just what to think. So today we have like all that stuff you need, forms like waivers, authorization form, any kind of signature requirement. And then besides the paperwork is really the real nice part about being a marshal, I think, really going to work with the equestrian people. I love to design obstacles and to run events, seeing how other people work with their horses. Hopefully they will comply to rules and you don't need to do a lot of correcting for rule violations or need to deal with difficult person. But it's really, we need to be safe. We cannot have our equestrian events in the SCA if we have too many accidents. I mean, accidents can happen. It's a big animal. Horses are dangerous, but we're trying to reinforce the rules and keep it as safe as we can. And that's basically the marshal's job, besides having some fun as well. So at the event, and that's for me when I go and I'm in charge of event, can be any kind of SEA events, practices, demos. And for me, before the day actually starts, I have all the paperwork already printed that I know I need to have. And if it is more than just a practice, so it's an event where non-equestrians maybe show up too, I make sure my 12 people, my autocrat has all those documents that need to be signed. And those documents are all online. And I basically just make sure a week or a month, whenever we get together to talk about what we're doing at the event, I just make sure they have all those documents we're going to talk about, instead of making sure I get there early, hand off the paperwork for people's on 12. I also have additional paperwork for me, but just one step less to do. I just basically hand it or delegate already to have a lot of things done at 12 at the gate. It's just one less thing for me to run after. To be marshal in charge at any event, practice, demo, event, it is a busy day. I don't know how anybody can make it not busy, because you're going to be running back and forth all day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things. So one of those things is we really need to do is making sure all of our waivers are signed. The waivers are, and it is the equestrian waiver, I should specifically say, because we do have SEA waivers and we normally have them signed on our membership card, or you can sign it at 12 if you're not a member. But for the equestrian, we also have our equestrian waiver to be signed, and they are state specific.
Okay.
So you are still in Pennsylvania, right?
I'm New York.
New York. So you need to make sure, and New York, I think New York had a different regulations on top of it. Kim, do you remember? Was New York has 2 signatures or 2 separate waivers?
Last time I knew, New York did not have a state-specific waiver. They used the SCA waiver.
Okay, that's what it was. I knew there was something specific. That's
And I don't
something
think
to
they
double
changed.
check with your marshal in charge for that time.
Okay.
They should know.
But he's in Pennsylvania, but I'll double check.
It's where the event is. It is always your event location, and that's a good point to put out, because like Ethelmark, we cover 3 different states, because we have West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New York in Ethelmark. So wherever that event is located, not the marshal in charge, it's always the address of the event. You need that state specific waiver, equestrian waiver for that. But in here, that is the link. You normally can find, at least for Ethelmark, you can find them online as well, or yes, it's an SCA webpage, so it's all online. You just need to, it's one document, all states, all 50 states are in one long document. You need to scroll down and get that state that applies to you. It's all alphabetically.
Okay.
And I just basically downloaded it then on my computer, so I don't need to look through that whole file all the time. And then again, for the day of the event, if the site requires any kind of test or health certificate, like Coggins test for the horses, or health certificate for incoming horses, the SCA does not require that horses are tested or checked or anything else.
Okay. I checked with the site owners and they said just rabies, so, which surprised me because usually they want Coggins and stuff for a mundane horse show.
Yeah, I would.
New York's funny about their rabies. That's one of the ones that we always had to have going up into New York.
But okay, there's rabies in the area too, so I think that's their biggest concern.
And that's basically, make sure you put that in your announcement. So if you know the site requires something specific, because most horse owners who travel with the horses consistently will have a Coggins test.
Okay.
But if the site does not require anything, the SCA does not require normally anything, unless you have an event with a lot of horses coming from various states. Then the marshal in charge can say, I would like to have a health certificate because we have 50 horses coming in, sleeping in one barn. We just want to make sure everybody's healthy. But normally SCA normally does not request additional health certificate or immunizations. What I do, because again, I like to minimize my workload for the day of the event. I contact people who are coming in, like Kim and I, we just talked. I know already now she's not coming with a horse. I don't need to ask for a Coggins test. But when I did last weekend or 2 weekends ago, my practice, everybody sent in their Coggins test prior to showing up. So everybody trailering in, every horse, I knew who's coming, and because of trailer parking and organizing the parking, and the site required Coggins test. So I had everything. So when everybody showed up, I did not run for any paperwork.
Okay, so they normally send it with pre-registrations?
You do not have to. It's something I'll do.
Okay,
You can go and just have a check. Normally, if the site requires any of those health certificate or Coggins tests, they cannot unload unless your paperwork is checked first.
okay,
And for me, because everybody shows up at the same time, and then you need to run from one trailer to the next. So I just have it sent prior to me. And then I basically go and hand it over to the barn if they want to see a copy, or if they are okay that I check it. That's a communication you have with your facilitator.
okay.
And that's
Lisa, is that something that you can like make a judgment call, even like if the location doesn't require with if you are going to be a marshal at the for the event, can you make that judgment call of like, no matter what, I want to make sure that everybody has a Coggins to kind of cover yourself?
You can, like I mentioned, people who do like golf wars next week, I think, I don't bring a horse, but I think because there are like 50 horses showing up, they basically ask for Coggins test or so. So I know 50 year, even if the site doesn't require it, but you have a lot of horses coming from all over the United States, you definitely can go and ask for it.
Yeah,
And that is
in the past when I've worked with GESA before, and we've done multiple events. Some sites actually want you to have copies of that so that they can keep it on file. Some sites don't care. But the main thing that was always stressed to us as marshals, we as SCA, we do not enforce state law.
Yeah.
A lot of these requirements for horses coming from out of state into your state, that's a state law. That's not an SCA law. So if the site doesn't require it, you as the marshal, you can. But again, it's not the law that we have to enforce, because you will get some pushback from people. I've dealt with it, that, they say, well, I'm not, I'm coming in from out of state, this, that, or the other. Well, hey, you know what? The site requires it. I just had to double check with a state park that I'm doing one in May. I just wanted to make sure they had new management. Do you want the actual physical paper copies? They said, no, we don't, but we want them. If we come down and check them, which they can, they said, we want them to have them on site. So like I said, it can be, like I said, we don't judge, we don't do the state law thing, but as a marshal, if you feel that you want that done, you can.
Yeah.
Just be aware that there might be some people with pushback.
And that's really good to, and I forgot that the state law we don't reinforce. I always say, like, we don't ask normally for it, but it's basically the state law we don't reinforce. But and especially like you, Kelly, you have your own horse, if you want to make sure everybody else is coming in is healthy, so your horse doesn't get contaminated, definitely you can.
Okay, thanks for answering the question, both of you. I appreciate it.
And that's something I have out there. This is not mandatory, but in case, it's very advisable to keep a log who is coming. And that is just one of my copies. Ethelmark actually has a bunch of logs in their forums in it. I think other kingdoms have as well. And this is basically to keep a log in case anything happens. Who is, so basically I just have for me, who's attending, regular name, SEA name, a phone number, if we are a member or not. And this is also something, and I will address it later. Check when you do this, check the authorization codes. We talked about this in previous meetings, and Donna, that's the marshals, not the autocrats' responsibility.
Okay.
Authorizations need to be checked, and that would be a good way to do it. Horses, for me, I just have my 2 fat girls on here. Coggins, yes. Emergency contact. And you can do it off-site, on-site, depending on what kind of event you have. If you're going for a 10-day event and everybody's camping, you might need to have an on-site or an off-site emergency contact. And what do I have? And the right to transport. So if anything happens to the rider, who is taking care of that horse? Who has, because if something happens and I can't answer those questions, somebody needs to know how to get my horses back home. You can't just leave it there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then basically, did we sign the waiver? And then I have, for me, I have 1 sheet of paper, and as one of those things really, I always hate to mention it, but when this stuff happened with Terrafan, the only reason everybody or the person had his wife's steps number or Devasa's number on the sheet, they basically, he asked like, call my wife, and somebody had it right there. So really bad or sad example, but it's one of those. We have to have something, because you don't know all of your riders and who is with and where is their phone. Would we know, find somebody in case of an emergency, to find somebody. So how you do it for you, and I adjust it depending on where I go, but I always have a transportation log. It also helps me when I need to create the summary for the event. I know exactly who was here and how many horses showed up and other stuff as well. It's a good log for me to keep. And I have everybody filling it out, hopefully before their activities start. So I normally go from, actually, and I talk about this in a little bit. So if you have awesome people showing up, right, Kelly? I have that on clipboards, and I'll just basically hand it over and was like, collect everybody's signature. And then I'll just go over, did they get everybody? The marshal in charge does not have to do everything by themselves. It is okay to delegate. We have plenty of stuff to do, and it does not need to be a marshal who makes sure or ask people to fill out paperwork. Just you as the marshal in charge, you have to make sure you got everybody covered.
Okay.
So that's basically, that was just the law, but these are those required documents for that. And that's basically to have those waivers signed. And again, those are those equestrian waivers. It's additional to that to the SEA waiver. And if you have an event with non-equestrians as well as equestrians, so if I only have a practice, there are only the people who are riding showing up and not really audience, and there's no procession, nobody's gonna pet my horse, they're just like us riding, I only have the equestrian waivers then signed. So, but if there is like, we have like that championship and fighting and people staying overnight, everybody who comes in needs to sign your SCA waiver and equestrian waiver. And that's where a great place it is. It's just really the troll. You're trolling
Okay.
in at the gate, everybody needs to sign it.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. I always keep then additional waivers at the equestrian area because some people unload the horses and then troll in later. So I'll get them as soon as they arrive.
Okay.
It's for me, I prefer it's double signature instead of missing a signature.
Well, hopefully we'll catch everybody coming in because we have one entrance and Troll's gonna be right there. So,
Yeah, again, for if you're coming with horses, I unload first and take care of my horse first before I for troll in.
okay.
And in that time, something could happen.
Yeah.
And that's basically where I am getting, and that's horse people, and it might not be everybody, some people, and I had it happen with big fair. As soon as you pulled in the fairground, people stop your truck and you sign paperwork while you're sitting in the truck. That's also something. But if you're running 8 hours to get to a site, you might just want to get out and take care of your horses instead of doing paperwork.
Right.
But
Okay.
if you, so that's basically for me. I arrive normally first. Marshal in charge, you need to be on site first, and we have that basically. That's just a clarification. I talked about that. So that's just the same documents and where we have it. That's a copy of it. And then here for the marshal in charge, you need to be there before anybody else shows up. If it's an official event, no equestrian can show up and unload horses without the marshal present.
Okay.
So if the person showing up is not the marshal in charge, but is a marshal, it's still kind of okay. But the marshal in charge should say, I'll be on site at 5. So nobody should come before 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So you need to have that marshal present for that. So, and that's one of those really things. So I'm normally there, my horses are taken care of. So I only need to go and take care of everybody else coming in. So I have, even the troll has paperwork, but I also have my paperwork, my waivers to sign. And then basically for the event, so people came, they basically set everything up. The marshal in charge is overseeing and monitoring all equestrian events. Whatever happens with the equestrians, the marshal needs to be in eyesight. So
Okay.
if you have some things going on with like a procession, the meet and greet, or something else, maybe where you take a horse somewhere, the marshal still should, you need to have a marshal present. So if you have your large arena where you may, or large event site where you can have 2 or 3 arenas occupied with different activities, every activity, if you can't see both arenas, every activity needs to have a marshal present. It does not always need to be the marshal in charge. You can delegate. So Kim is a marshal. I can basically say, hey, Kim, can you oversee that mounted combat while I do the jousting training over here? I know she's authorized in it. And that would be something for Ethelmark with authorization and overseeing. So she could basically marshal an activity, she's authorized in it. And then I can do a different activity, because otherwise you only can do one activity at a time. So you can do a delegate, you can supervise other marshals, or but while equestrians horses are on site, the marshal in charge, unless somebody else is like delegated right now to take over, cannot leave the site. So I can say, oh, I'm pulling out Saturday night and people still stay till Sunday. I have
Okay.
to stay, if I'm marshal in charge, I need to stay till the last equestrian left, unless I can delegate that to a different marshal.
Okay.
So again, there's a lot, we have a lot of marshals in Ethelmark. So it's always okay to delegate. And a lot of times, and that's something a lot of equestrians or marshals don't really know. They think they need to do everything, all activities that day, the parking, the paperwork, every activity, the stalls management or anything else. It's okay to delegate. And for all the marshals here, really try to delegate as much as you can so you can have some fun and don't burn out, especially if you have multiple day events. So another person in charge if there's anything happening within the barn or in the warm-up arena or something else, that you don't have to do everything. And it is always okay to sponsor an activity. For the first years of me actually doing anything within the SCA, I never knew I could have said, so Kim did a lot of events. I just showed up and Kim was providing everything. And I basically wrote in whatever was presented. I never really said, hey, Kim, I want to go and do something else. Can I go and sponsor or do an activity? And I just want to go and rescue the Ride of the Dragon or have a trip to Grandma's house. And I would like just to have a little fun ride with that. I never knew I could. It took me 10 years plus, probably, I don't know, till I realized that other people did that. And that's something really for your event, Donna, you have your equestrian champion who will probably do a lot of event. But if there is somebody you can go and put out, there's actually should be your marshal in charge if they are calling for any other activities, not just the equestrian championship. If they want to do mounted archery, mounted combat, jousting or so, you can always, or your marshal in charge should do that. But you can ask him if there's room for anything else. Championship has priority, but in between, and not everything needs to be watched by the royals. The championship, yes, but for the mounted archery or anything else, not the royals could step away and do something else, and you still can go and save the dragon and ride to Grandma's house. I like themed obstacle courses. But that's something for all of us marshals, and it's one of my weaknesses. I really try to get better to delegate.
That takes experience.
Oh, I'm such a control freak.
Well, it also takes when you have other marshals there that you can delegate it to.
Yes. And yeah, and marshals who are willing to do something, not just to show up and ride in other people's.
Really? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's helpful too.
Because, and I mean, not everybody knows how to, so it is a skill to set up obstacle course. I've known people that really struggle because they don't have that vision what to do, and it takes them a lot of energy to come up with anything. It's just something, my mind is a little bit weird, I guess. It's really easy for me. I always find, and I like to do it challenging and play with that. But not everybody has that skill or really know how to. So it's okay for marshals not wanting to do it. And not everybody feels comfortable with that. I'm fine with that. So like I know Kim is running all the time. So it's always good to go and delegate and offer, do you want to an activity? And they can be fun activities like the ring around the roses, we did it, or like a cavalry ride or something else. So it does not need to be always the games. So when we have new people on site, one of the things is, so if a new person comes without being sponsored, they just heard about it, thinks it's cool. Oh, I have a horse, I just show up. and don't really know anything about it. For the marshal in charge, they're kind of responsible to help them. I don't really want to say responsible, to keep an eye on it, because that person would not know SCA regulations, any laws, how we do things. They just maybe wanted to go. And for an event, not as much that anybody maybe can or just show up, they can. I was like, it's easier in a practice just to come up and practice the skills with your horse than never have done it and riding in an event. Before they actually can go and be in an event, they have to get authorized. It's not true that you can, before they ride the activity within the event, they need to be authorized and made sure they are safe to do so. And that's really something then marshal in charge or marshals there need to make sure that person is educated about the rules, the regulations, safety for weapons handling, horse control, and we have authorization process, how everything is or should be done in a different meeting. And we started that last year to have a standardized authorization checklist. It's voluntary, it's available online, and I just can maybe pull it up real quick. It's just something, oops. Let me try that again. You still see new people on your screen?
I see people.
Yeah, okay. For whatever reason, I can't share it. Might not be compatible right now because an online thing, don't know. But it's online. We just basically did, and it's not that you have to use it, but for marshals, only marshals can authorize new riders. Some might want to have a reminder what to check until they may be more fluent in authorizing new people. So it's just a suggestive tool to maybe make it easier for inexperienced marshals or who don't really maybe authorize a lot of people. But really one of the things is before they really ride the activity, they can practice before the activity starts. Most of the time, the day starts with warming up, riding, and you have like some time before the championship starts. If the championship starts like early in the morning, then they would need to have it done prior to competing. You can't compete without or ride in an event activity without being authorized for that activity prior to attending it. I hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
So but it's not that they could not show up. They just need, and if people show up and new, which is difficult if they don't know anybody, they would need to contact the marshals if there is time allowance for authorizations. That would be the other thing, because if there's only, like if you start early in the morning and you're starting at 10 o'clock your championship and the marshal is not going to be there until 9, there's only an hour time, might not be enough time to do a lot of authorizations. So there should be some communication if possible. If you have a surprise person showing up, just want to play, then the marshal needs to do a judgment call. Can you do it? Is it safe? Are other marshals able to do it? But again, they have to be authorized prior to participating in SCA activities. Riders and drivers, again, really making sure they have the authorization and they need to apply to the rules. If there's anything that is unsafe, unsportsmanlike, the authorization can be taken away. or suspended for like 6 months, and everything needs to be reported to the event steward in case anything really happens, and that would be an incident report that needs to be filled out. So most of the time when we see something as marshals that is unsafe, act poorly, animal cruelty, or they have a training moment, we normally talk to that individual first. Almost like, hey, can you maybe go somewhere else? That's not really a good demonstration of how SCA is treating the horses. Can you go and just trying to communicate first before we actually suspend them? But it is then documented, and if that continues to be an unsafe, unsportsman individuals, you basically could be terminated from participating in any kind of SCA equestrian events. And then there's a process to it with that. Oops, did I split one? And that goes to any equestrians or riders or drivers, since we have more and more drivers nowadays. One of the other things for marshals to maybe be known of, but it's more also for any equestrians or horse owner that gets approached, hey, can I ride your horse? It is, we never, ever, ever have to go and give our horse to anybody else. Even if they are higher ranking within the SCA and think they could pull rank because of their titles, you as the horse owner, you always can say no. It's your horse, you normally don't have to do that. And there are some people who will understand. It is also maybe somebody, and I had that happen where somebody who normally could maybe ride my horse, but that day was really intoxicated. Not riding my horse. You should
Not a
never,
good combination.
as an equestrian marshal, if you know somebody is not cognitive stable enough for substance intake, or mentally maybe not really great, should have a talk that this is not a good time to be in a saddle. Safety always first. It is how you talk to them, but substance or intoxication, let's call it, happens at SCA, and it's normally not wise to control a 2,000-pound animal. So if those would be persistent of taking your horse, riding your horse, or you might say yes, but then you realize they're really abusive or not nice to your horse, you always can go back on that. So should they, if you as a marshal see that a horse owner has those conflicts right now, it's always also to help that person out. And basically, as an equestrian marshal in charge, you always have the last say so. So you can remove somebody from that property if you need to. That includes non-equestrian people, even if they don't like it. Rental horses, we do have more and more actually now, at least for me right now, that since fall, I found 2 arenas that are willing to share horses and would actually, for their fee, supply horses for non-horse owners, which is awesome. But the SCA is not renting the horse.
Right.
It is the barn. So it is something really, they need to go make sure it's the barn, and the horse needs to be safe for, actually the marshal does not depend on what activity, but it's something actually the horse needs to be rented by that individual from that place, and then as a team they basically would show up for that activity. But the SCA will never ever be liable to any kind of damage for the rental horse or carriage or anything like that. And then one of the other things we do have more and more emphasis on it. It's really the horse welfare. And we started actually in one of those Zoom ones really to discuss how to encourage individuals who are really kind to their horse. So if there's any kind of safety or health questions, we as marshals would have to somebody for the horse, either on how it's treated or how it is arriving, like looks already sick, or somebody is riding a horse, continues to ride a horse after it is lame and limping already, or any kind of negative treatment towards the horse. I hate even to say to be cruel and abusive and inhumane, but we can have that because everybody has their own theories on how to discipline a horse. I've also seen at other events that the human likes to take care of themselves first and forgets to water and feed the horse. And so we as SCA, those policies we actually follow, the welfare of the horse is the AQHA for the American Quarter Horse Association, their guidelines for that. And it is not that we just see a horse coming and we see ribs and bones. We would come and talk to the horse owner first. So it's not for us to judge. Maybe you need to get the full story. Oh, that's a horse I just basically rescued from the meat factory, or she just had a baby and is still nursing. So I'm working on feeding her again, or just came over an abscess and it's still a little bit limping, or has a chronic issue with one of the hoofs. So before you basically say, oh, your horse looks sick, talk to the horse owner, find out about the story, because it could be just, it's a rescue, it used to be sick, it's better now, or it just, whatever it is, and just see if the owner really tries to take care of it. One of those abusive behavior, like the pulling on the bit so you see blood, or having those harsh bits in it that makes your tongue bleed, or the horse's tongue bleed. Any kind of, or like abusive spur using, that you basically see blood from where the spurs are, or rubbing marks, curb straps, any kind of devices that scream abuse to the horse. So again, talk to them first, because you maybe don't know what happened in the past, or if they arrive with marks on it, maybe it's something from old, whatever it is. But the marshal in charge is basically has the right to observe the horse and basically say, well, we need to do something about it. And if you, as the marshal in charge, fill out an incident report and you document, if you think there's suspicion and that horse and the owner needs to be monitored, it's always great to have documentation, because if the horse continues to look like this and continues to show up in questionable condition, then we have a track record, if it's right now the first time, or if that's something ongoing. And that's the same with anybody who has difficult behaviors for that, difficult behaviors within the arena. And everybody can have a bad day. So I'm not saying just because you lost it one day because you were really stressed and you were screaming and yelling and you said, hey, that was really disrespectful. You still can say that, but because we're trying to have fun and getting along. But we're talking about individuals who are continuously disrespectful and rule violating, disregarding. So if you say basically, hey, slow down, you don't it's too fast for those activities or too crowded, you need to stay away from the other horses, you need to slow down, you can't run into groups of horses standing there because your horse likes to run. And if they don't listen to you and continue to do that, then you basically have actions. Most of the time you have a conversation first. But then again, the equestrian marshal in charge is in charge of all equestrian activities. And at the end, equestrian marshal has the last word. So if there's anything going on and you think it's there needs to be disciplined actions taken because of not listening, of safety regulations are not being followed, inappropriate, unsafe behavior, you basically give them a warning. You can ask them to be removed from the field. And then you can, if that continues, then they can be removed from that tournament or practice. If it continues to happen at multiple, you can suspend their authorization. So it's like you just say, hey, you're done with this activity, just leave right now, I'll see you tomorrow. And then if that tomorrow is again and it's a longer event, you just might say, hey, pack up, see you next time. And if it continues, you basically continue to restrict them more and more for coming back. If there is anything that involves a disciplinary actions, you do need to go and inform that event steward. You need to fill out a report. It goes to the KEO, and then there are different discipline actions that is basically going for that. So you basically have a society sanctioned guide that is going to be followed if that should come to that part of that. And when you get to, I don't want that anybody has to get to that point, then basically it's a kingdom law and the kingdom marshal policies, and then the guidelines will be all applied to that person, and discipline will be applied for that. But I never had to do it. I don't know, Kim, if you ever had to. You're longer in the game than I have.
No, I've never had to speak to them now and again, but usually horse people they're good about it. If you mention something to it, that they handle it really well. That I've never had to do paperwork, and I hope I never have to.
Yeah. And so I don't know, Noria, a lot of times Arabella is joining us, and she normally gets the paperwork and she knows stories. But I never had to. But if it comes to anything, you will also have support people who will come for that. The biggest thing is be aware what's going on. I have to talk to people on a regular basis, I would say, because I see unsafe weapon handling, that they're holding the weapon. If the horse would turn, the spear tip would be right in the horse's eye, and stuff like that, where I really say you need to watch out with some of that stuff, or how they're handling the sword or lance or anything. That more than cruel animal behaviors for that. And that's actually all I had for the PowerPoint. I know it was in there somewhere, but I did not talk about it. And I think before the activities happen, we talked last year, and we are trying to find better systems for the marshal to check authorization cards before they start the activity. That was one big thing. And so if you actually have them filling out of the log, you can basically go and have that checked up when they're basically trawling in for that event. One of the other thing is, in Atlantia suggested that they have normally an MOL doing all the scorings. And if you have like a day or full of event, every event you need to register for. So if I want to say, oh, at 3 o'clock is archery, I'm gonna sign up for that. And then I need to come with my authorization card or my phone, because it's on there, and say I would like to do mounted archery, and they basically would check that's the activity and do are you authorized, or do you need to be authorized? And then again, if I'm not authorized yet, I need to be authorized in that first. So that was one of the ways to do it, or basically to if you have a multiple day event, when everybody's pulling in, really have a meeting and check everybody's authorization card and what they're allowed to do. If you have multiple days with a lot of different activities, it's probably difficult to keep track of it. Who's authorized in what? So for me, most of the people I authorized, actually, that's one thing, good thing, I know who has what authorization. But when I do ethel marks, and I normally do my events all around Pittsburgh, I kind of know who's authorized in what, and it's always the same people. But for larger event, people coming from out of kingdom, make sure they are just authorized. So in case anything happens, we kind of know they were supposed to know what to do. The other thing is, so writers meeting was something, and tolling in would be something, or if you have an MOL or sign up list for each activity, have them show you the authorization card. That was like how to track the authorization. And the other thing was to have a weapon check. Especially when, well, and a lot of times we equestrians, we share our things. A lot of times, if somebody needs a sword, and I normally travel with a duplicate sword so I can loan my gear out, or you leave your lances by the practice site and then somebody else can grab your lance and hit the quintain or catch some wings. And we actually had an incident last year where somebody knew that the lance was already a little bit cracked, but there was like, it's still going to be okay for this event. But then sharing, and during an event, things can get busy and you might forget, one lance might not be so great. So if you grab that lance and then something would happen, and the owner was like, oh, I knew that was cracked, but I thought it was okay, that lance should have never been on the field. But a lot of times, and I need to say that was one of the discussions we had afterwards, my weapons, I don't think ever been checked. I think when I got authorized years ago for mounted archery, my bow was checked, and it was checked if my horse can handle it. But nowadays, I show up with my equipment. I don't think anybody ever checked my authorization card or my equipment or my armor. And that really was one of those things that we said before, if you're marshal in church, you can delegate it to a different marshal. And sometimes for me, for archery, if I have an archer, master archer, or ground archer, sometimes I was like, can you do the bows and check some of that equipment? Because I know that can be something that is like really similar or the same equipment they use. And they can basically tell me if there's a defective bow. And so you can't delegate that. And that was something we as within this meeting over the last year, really said needs to have a emphasis making sure authorization cards are checked, as well as weapons are checked. If you do have a activity that requires armor, like jousting, crest, mounted combat, should be also have a quick check. Not just a quick, it needs to be safe. The grill should be checked, or the helmet should be checked. It should be checked for if do they, is the body really protected, or after 10 years of jousting, they should know, but maybe they, didn't, or forgot an armor, or outgrew and forgot to replace, and now they just make it work. And I think that should be really more emphasis, not me, but yeah, something for the marshal in charge really before you start on the day. If you know the people or not, take that time and have that checked before activities. So that I added that to the slide, but I probably was talking, not reading. And that's basically all I had. The last part is all the great documentation a marshal needs to do. So I know, right? All the fun stuff. Any questions? Anything you wanted to add, or maybe you're thinking about adding to the entire thing that should be included?
What kind of archery equipment do you need? Is it like the boulder blunts that you do with heavy fighting, or target archery?
You do target archery.
Okay.
So for me, I have a horse bow. I have a shorter bow, 4 horses, 30 pounds. But basically target arrows. It's the same thing as in ground archery for that. So if you have that,
Okay.
you're good with that. You should go. So if you get authorized for mounted archery, for us in Ethelmark, the marshal who's authorizing the activity needs to be authorized in that activity, and needs to know about the weapons and how to test for it. So we have some activities like mounted archery where we need to make sure that horse is safe as well. Not every horse likes to have arrows fired off or have some jousting or combat. So there's a quick horse check as well. Horses don't get authorized. You don't get authorized as a pair besides sight riding. But if I see as a marshal, like I have that right now for April, somebody who jousted with me 6 years ago, Blaine, he has a new horse and he hasn't been jousting in 6 or 7 years. And it's a brand new horse. So I practice with him off SEA events because it's his arena, and to make sure his horse and he is safe.
Right.
For doing that. Can't always do that because sometimes people just show up at your event and you don't know. But for me, if I'm marshalling, I've never seen you joust before and you just show up, I probably would ask you, hit the quintain. I want to see your armor. I want to see what your horse does. We do measuring passes. And I pulled horses out of my list because I knew he could joust, but that horse was not ready. And then I was like, sorry, that is not safe. You always, as a marshal, you always can make that call. If you think there's issues and it would be trauma for the horse. So that one was like head up, eyes rolling backwards, and just like wasn't rearing, but was all up. And I was like, that head is right in the target area. If he doesn't control the whole, there's just danger. And next time maybe she rears up and you come down, that horse needs training.
Right.
And that basically, then it's just difficult sometimes to do it you need to stop the event and just do it. So if I don't joust myself, then I have time to do it. So we in Ethelmark basically made rules. If I can marshal from the horse, or if I have no other jousting marshal present, I can attend their activity while I'm marshalling it. Kim, are you a jousting marshal? You're muted.
Sorry, I gave that up several years ago because I don't do it anymore.
Okay. So, but I know Cope, who just joined us, she's a jousting marshal. So if she's there, I basically could say, could you marshal? And then I don't need to pay attention to anything else around it. So I would basically give up, even if I'm marshal in church. And I think that's all we had.
Okay, so I have one quick question. For the forms that you have to get filled out, as far as, you know, signatures for like, or release waivers for that is SCA specific, are those things that are available that you can get access to, or is it kind of like
They're on the SCA.org website.
oh, okay.
The waivers are on it, and then the authorization. We in Ethelmark have different one, and authorizations forms can look a lot different in different kingdoms, so it's not always the same. Let me see, but
Yeah, you want to check your kingdom web page on your Marshallet page to make sure you've got the right forms.
yeah, Kelly is Ethelmark. She's one of my good peeps I have, and who loves to help me because she volunteered kind of. So this is the
She's
waiver
flattering me.
for. Oh, did you complain? What?
No, I said you're flattering me.
Oh, you're awesome. You know I love you. So Kelly, you probably, I don't know if you've been at that first practice, but Cope helped me marshalling that first practice.
Yeah, I think I was there for that.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were there last year in April. I know the other ones you were, but
that I think that was the first one that I did, and I tried doing Dakota, my mom's black and white horse, but he had to have booties on because he was getting over a bout of laminitis, and I switched horses halfway through to Cochise, who I was like, I don't know if he'll be good for this, because he was still really green at that point, and then turns out he loves it. And I mean, Dakota's still good, but
and you did great a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he did not care about anything.
So this on the screen, if you can see my shared screen, this is our Pennsylvania, but like Donna mentioned, even she is Ethelmark, but it's New York. Here on top, you see the Pennsylvania. You would need to make sure wherever that event is, you have the right one. And that, like I said, it's one document. All of the 50 states are on the document. You just need to get to that one page that is, thank you, awesomeness. It's the website, Jarun, is that how you pronounce your name? Not sure if you can hear me. That's basically on the in the chat is the link for it. Yeah, so for me, again, I have, before I do the event, and I normally do, including practices and events, I normally have 6 to 8 running a year. So I just basically have everything downloaded in folders and just have already stuff printed ahead of time. And when on my forms, I've pre-filled out my name and stuff. So I have one thing less to write in it. So I just basically have everything ready to go, because I'm not good with last minute and staying cool. I can't wing stuff. Otherwise, any questions or anything? And or did it help you, Donna?
Oh, tremendously. I'm really glad I logged in, and you gave me a lot of information I'm not aware of. So this is something new for our group. And we've got a few people who are interested in horses. So I'm hoping our equestrian event in September might be an annual thing. We're just working out ideas with the site and stuff. And I do have a couple other stables in the area that are kind of maybe.
And if you want to, so because you're still in the planning stage, if you remind me, I can also send you the link, but if you go to the SCA Equestrian Facebook page, the first section is in there as well, which is basically like this. And the PowerPoint is there, or you find the PowerPoint on it as well, if that helps you.
Okay.
I will be leaving Thursday to go to Gulf Wars, so you will not reach me until I come back. But actually, I come back and fly to Quebec, I should say, to go skiing for a couple of days as a business trip, which is kind of cool. And then I'll be back on the 23rd. So I'm limited online while I'm in medieval event or
That's
skiing.
understandable.
But Cope, while are you here? I have a question for you.
What's up?
Well, I saw your shout out on Facebook on who is showing up. Do we have our head count?
Nobody has answered me. So,
I saw it and I was like, I thought I'm gonna privately message you, but right now I'm like trying to get shit done.
that's cool. Like I said, if nobody wants to